Come to order. Hello, I am Marcia Herbert, President of the Board of Education. I would like to welcome you to the December 13th, 2023 board meeting. In keeping with the board's commitment to open communication with the community, this meeting is being, in keeping with the community, I can't even read this tonight. Oh my, in keeping with the board's commitment to open communication with the community, I got it right now. This meeting is being streamlined on the CCPS website at www.carrollk12.org and broadcast live on Channel 21. We are also recording this meeting so it can be accessed on demand on our website and broadcast throughout the month on Channel 21. Public participation will be approximately held at 5:15. Speakers will be directed into the boardroom from the building lobby and are allocated 3 minutes to address the board. As a reminder, please silence all cell phones and other devices. Board members, please turn off your microphones when you're not speaking. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Ms. Battaglia. I will state that at the conclusion of our open session, the board will be returning to closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining and to receive legal advice. Any corrections, comments? Okay, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of the minutes on we got a lot of papers here tonight. Here we go. November 8th, 2023. Comments?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Savigny and seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Battaglia. Comments, questions, corrections? Seeing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. At this time, I would like the report from the Carroll County Student Government, and our board member will be giving it tonight. Thank you so much.
Of course. On Tuesday, December 5th, CCSGA had an executive board meeting where we discussed our finalization for materials for our December General Assembly, and we talked about student representative on the board applications. On Wednesday, December 6th, we had our December General Assembly at Francis Scott Key High School. With over 200 participants, students sat through the keynote with Billy Live, who answered questions on creating change in their communities. Our Vice President, AJ Sebian, led our trivia contest, and students participated in feeder school discussions with their middle and high schools to learn more about the SGA opportunities available. We had 2 workshops for this General Assembly where students learned the parliamentary procedure and made Linus blankets to donate to people in need. We also passed an amendment to our Constitution, allowing middle schools to send 15 delegates instead of just 10. Finally, our student representative on the Board of Education, me, will be hosting student representative interest meetings for students to learn more about the position. And the first meeting will be held tomorrow, Thursday, December 14th at 6 p.m., and it will be on a Google Meet. Students can speak with their SGA advisors in order to register. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. And Dr. McCabe, you are on.
I declare the office of the President of the Board of Education of Carroll County vacant and ask for nominations for this office.
I move Marcia Herbert be president.
I would like to second that.
If no further nominations, all those in favor of Marcia Herbert as President of the Board of Education, please indicate by raising your hand. 2. Okay, it's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your vote of confidence. At this time, I declare the office of Vice President of the Board of Education of Carroll County vacant and ask for nominations for this office. I would like to nominate Ms. Tyra Battaglia. I like to keep it just like it is.
And I will
Do we have a
second that.
second?
I will second that as well.
Thank you. Ms. Savigny, any others? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Opposed? So we had 4-2 or 3-2? Thank you. And then we will, motion carries. Thank you. Now we will move on to public comment.
To have an orderly presentation of comments by the public, the following guidelines apply. Speakers with a connection to CCPS will be allowed to address the board for the allotted 3 minutes. Only those speakers that have registered online will be notified by the Communications Department and will be permitted to speak. Priority will be given to those citizens that are addressing the board about an item on the current agenda. Citizens not appearing in person for public comment can write to the board through email or U.S. mail. Public participation is not intended to be a question-answer session. However, if citizens have specific questions, the superintendent will assign a staff member to make contact during the board meeting to arrange a time to respond to questions. The superintendent and board reserve the right to correct misinformation presented as factual after the conclusion of the public participation period. Statements to the board should relate to a recent item on the agenda, an agenda item to expect to appear in the future, or a matter of general policy over which the board has authority. Personnel matters, pending appeals, the actions or statements of individual staff, or items related to employee negotiations are not appropriate topics and may not be discussed. The board has scheduled time on the agenda for public participation at approximately 5:15 p.m. The board reserves the right to limit the number of speakers on a particular topic so that all topics may be addressed. Additionally, the board retains the discretion to allow additional speakers as it deems appropriate. The board is allowing no more than more than an hour, for public participation. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. All comments should be directed to the board members at the dais. Citizens may only address the board with their individual comments. Citizens may not stand in for another group or person and read their comments. When the allotted time expires, the speaker is permitted to complete a sentence. Citizens may leave any handouts for the board members on the table in the back of the boardroom. Please do not approach the dais. Additionally, public may not display signs or posters during the board meeting. In lieu of signs, or if you are unable to complete your comments in the allotted time, individuals are encouraged to submit remarks to the board in writing. Those seated in the audience are asked to be respectful of the speaker and refrain from commenting to the speaker or the board members. Our first speaker is Christopher Koza. And if I mispronounce your name, please correct me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education, I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Christopher Koza. I wish to continue our conversation from September about the content of our public school libraries. I maintain the fundamental value proposition of our public education system is to instill the good, the true, and beautiful in our children. There are over 155 million unique books in existence. Our schools cannot hold the sum total of human literature, nor should they. I would be a liar and a fool to call all the books not included in our school libraries banned. We must economize the content of our public school libraries, as the shelf space is a scarce resource which has alternative uses. When the school librarians chose to include the sexually explicit book, Water for Elephants, what book did it displace? I thank the board for taking action in removing this book through your reconsideration committee. I hope for continued progress. To my good neighbors of Carroll County, including those with whom I disagree, I say I do not want these books banned. Removal from school libraries is a value judgment. I still want these books available for all adults to read for themselves. Please go to websites like booklooks.org and read the sexually explicit passages. If the pages of graphic sex acts do not sate your thirst for context, please rent the books from the public library and read until you're satisfied. If there is a line in your morality for what written sex acts can be made available to minors, I guarantee you will find it. Then ask yourself what motivation an adult would have to give this to your child. Our children are only young for so long. What will we teach them in this time? I wish to show you a few alternative choices. I have here Washington's Immortals by Patrick O'Donnell. In 1776, the Battle for Long Island, the British outmaneuvered the Americans and threatened to cut off and annihilate half the Continental Army. When the American lines collapsed, a battalion of Marylanders fought a desperate rearguard action. Highlander bullet and Hessian bayonet cut down these brave men as the Marylanders repeatedly charged the British lines. In the fields outside of Brooklyn, 256 Marylanders lay dead and over 100 captured. But what was purchased with their sacrifice? In the words of the great General Washington, those Marylanders fought or bought the Revolution 1 hour more precious to American liberty than any other. In that hour, our fledgling army escaped to fight yet another day. Who were these men who dared defy an empire? They were the old line, Washington's Immortals. Men from Frederick and Anne Arundel, men from the Appalachians to the Eastern Shore, all recruited and organized outside of Baltimore. They were men who called Maryland their home. Their legacy is our heritage. I ask you, good members of the board, who better than our schools to tell their story? I have here another book by Gene Kranz titled Failure is Not an Option. This book details the sacrifices and achievement of America through the Mercury and Apollo missions. Those two books, I give you the good and the true. For the beautiful, I have here Blue Sky, White Stars. It's in 8 of the 22 elementary schools. With this, let's make the 9th. By all means, please take my copies. In closing, I thank you, members of the board, for holding the line. For our part, we do not need the courage to charge in the battle like our forefathers. Thanks to the sacrifice of better men, we only need the courage to speak the truth. May God bless our children, and may God bless Carroll County.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean Hemp.
I taught this young gentleman.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you guys tonight. My name is Sean Hampton. I am a lifelong Carroll County resident, CCPS parent of 2, and also a Carroll County Public High School teacher and coach. I stand before you today as one of your CCPS teachers with nearly 20 years of experience to address a critical concern that has been affecting the well-being and educational environment of our students. My daughter's response when I told her what I was going to speak on tonight was, well, no one's going to nominate you for Teacher of the Year. And while I understand where she's coming from, I still feel obligated to bring this issue up to all of you in an official capacity. The issue is the continued pervasive distraction that is cell phones in schools. We teachers are simply tired of being cell phone police. Many will say CCPS already has a cell phone and technology policy, and they're correct, but it's not effective. The current policy has us enter that a referral into our discipline system, which after 6 to 7 total screens equates to about 2+ minutes per referral. It adds up. Instructional time is precious. If we entered referrals for every time there was a cell phone violation per our policy, we'd have even less instructional time. That time needs to be focused on developing lasting relationships with our students, content, and emphasizing the learning for learning's sake. The choice we have right now is 1, enforce a policy that does little to curb the cell phone distractions in our classroom, or 2, continue on with our lesson. Guess which we choose. We simply cannot compete for the attention with those devices. We want you to take something off of our already full plates. It requires no money, no budget hearing or negotiations. It will improve teacher morale and show the Board of Ed support for an extremely popular instructional request. Have an effective policy that will get the distraction of cell phones out of our classrooms. In the end, we just want you to set a system standard with accountability and and with effective consequences that will emphasize student learning and engagement while minimizing distractions. I implore you to involve current teachers and admin in this decision if you decide to discuss it, as whatever you guys do decide, we're the ones that will be expected to implement and enforce that policy. I do not have all the answers, but I wanted to start the conversation officially so we can address this and get our kids back on track, because what we are doing is not working. Systems across the country are addressing cell phone addiction in the classroom without spending a dime, with policies like a cell phone is out, the admin is called on to confiscate it on the first offense, and the parent or student comes at the end of the day. Future cell phone violations or infractions are followed up with some progressive discipline process. This system has reported the following outcomes of their implementations in their policies. Student achievement and test scores improve, mental health and resiliency are recovering, cyberbullying and fighting have decreased, apathy is waning, and student-teacher engagement has improved drastically. All those outcomes, aren't they what we want for all of our students? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Greg Malveaux.
Hello, I want to thank the board for this time to speak. My name's Dr. Greg Malveaux. I am a candidate running for one of the two seats available for Carroll County Board of Education in 2024. I'm a 25-year educator with a PhD in higher education and administration. I currently teach writing and literature, and I'm a parent of a special needs child in one of our middle schools. I'd like to address the board about the topic of school safety. The rise in student mental health issues is of grave concern. Many teachers experience disruptions in class, including physical altercations between students and between students and staff. Carroll County is not immune to this nationwide pandemic. I know that the board and staff are working on this issue and urge you to consider applying a number of proactive measures to deal with threats to school safety. First, we just heard it, we need to address student use of cell phones in class. I have interviewed Carroll County students, and many have related that smartphones are a primary source of intimidation and bullying. Studies support that limiting the use of smartphones increases academic success, reduces bullying, and improves student relationships. Second, zero tolerance fighting policy in our schools. Some of our county delegates, in fact, are considering this policy for state legislation. We must ensure students know the consequences for fighting. I think it's also important that we support policies to indemnify and protect teachers from potential legal action in situations where staff take reasonable actions to prevent injuries to themselves and students. Third, increase mental or peer mentor programs. Older students can help younger students navigate through tough times. In fact, parents are sharing this success at Winters Mill High. The results of peer editing helps improve mental health for students and creates healthier social bonds for everyone. I hope that we can continue to work together and discuss other measures to prevent bullying and to improve safety in our schools, and I would be happy to continue the conversation with anyone who creates or wants to create healthier bonds and to approach me about this topic. In closing, 2 days ago at a fundraising event, I had both an invigorating and sad conversation with the founder of Be a Ray of Sunshine Foundation, who lost her daughter after she was bullied in school. This remarkable mother turned tragedy into victory by creating a foundation that encourages the entire community to consider ways that we can support kids, assist their mental health, and advocate for more anti-bullying measures. We all can and must work together to ensure that students have a safe environment to learn and grow. Thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all I have for public speaking.
Thank you. And we appreciate especially the teacher that came forward, because when he talked the whole time, I could see teachers' heads going up and down, and we will continue the conversation. All right, at this time, then we will have employee groups, and she is coming to the podium. Ms. Celeste.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Before I begin, I do have a message from Cindy Porter, president of CASE. She says, I'm currently recovering from right ankle surgery. Mine was the left, we're not the same. And would like to convey my best wishes to the Board of Ed, staff, students, and families for the holidays and upcoming winter break. I hope that this time affords CCPS staff some rest, much needed rejuvenation, and the opportunity to gather with those held dear. Cindy. Okay, so I did want to let you know that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, now, I am Celeste Jordan, president of CCA. I recently received a phone call from Maryland State Senator Craig Zucker, a Democrat from District 4, which is Montgomery County. The phone call took me by surprise because I don't often have state senators call me, especially ones from other districts entirely. Senator Zucker called me at the suggestion of MSEA Director Sean Johnson to let me know about some exciting news about a few CCPS playgrounds. Senator Zucker, as part of the Capital Budget Subcommittee and working with the Carroll delegation, the committee was able to earmark money for 3 Carroll County schools' playgrounds. I was informed that Piney Ridge Elementary School, Runningmead Elementary School, and Spring Garden Elementary School will all have access to $75,000 each for their playgrounds. It is always good when people work together to achieve a common goal. Speaking of working together, CCA and CCPS have been having collaborative meetings regarding the career ladder since this summer. The group started with nothing. Through conversation and open dialogue, we have made great progress. Part of the challenge of the blueprint is reimagining education and not relying on what has always been done. I would like to thank the CCPS team and our CCA team for taking on this challenge. We have not finished our work, but I think everyone in the group is pleased with our progress so far. While this process has been challenging, to say the least, we not only appreciate the intent of the blueprint, but we also appreciate the collaboration we have had thus far. I would like to give a little congratulations and a shout out to CCA's own Erica McAndrew, who was Carroll County's Teacher of the Year for the 22-23 school year. Erica was featured in a one-pager for MSEA, which I'm going to hand off to Nick Shockney because I'm not allowed to approach the dais. Erica was featured in a one-pager for MSEA. To quote Erica, quote, over the last 29 years, the profession of teaching has seen some drastic changes. However, one thing that has remained the same is that students still need amazing teachers. Every day, my students come in and want to be accepted as they are and who they are. We as teachers do that, end quote. Erica wrote about how she collaborates with other educators and how, quote, together we are better, stronger, wiser, end quote. Erica goes on to say how she, quoting again, realized asking for help makes me a better teacher. This is a lesson we can all benefit from hearing. So once again, I am asking for your help on the behalf of many educators in this county. The large majority of students in CCPS are great. I can count on one hand the number of truly disruptive students I've had in my 25-year teaching career with CCPS. And for those handful of children, I knew they had bigger issues than learning algebra. I knew that they had home issues that I could not fathom. I knew that they were struggling with mental health. I know how hard it is for students who do struggle with mental health issues in a society that has yet to truly take mental health as seriously as they do physical health. As if the brain is not just another organ in the body which can have issues just like all the other organs. Educators in CCPS are facing behaviors worse than anything we have seen in the past. One educator said to me, quote, how did we get here as a society, end quote. How did we get to a point where we don't have the resources for a child who is clearly in distress that they need? How do we get to a point where some students don't even bat an eye when they are evacuated to the hallway while another child destroys the room yet again? How do we get to the point where other children are being hurt, and instead of admin calling home to inform the parents, they pass the buck and make the educator deal with those calls? So after watching their room get destroyed, their students injured, themselves injured, after comforting the students, and then trying to teach a lesson, they are now responsible for calling home to tell a parent that their child was injured, and the only thing they can say is, we're doing the best we can. My question is, are we? Are we doing the best we can for students and our educators? I would say no, based on the fact that an educator was told about a week ago when referring to the other students in the class, and I'm quoting, "Those kids are not hurt enough," end quote. I'm not sure that quote meets COMAR regulations that, again, I'm going to quote again here, "All students in Maryland Public Schools have the right to an educational environments that are safe." I'm going to end my whole thing here with another quote by Dolly Parton, American icon. We, quote, "We can't just hope for a brighter day. We have to work for a brighter day." I'm going to wish everyone a happy holidays. I'm not making a political statement when I say happy holidays. There are a bunch of holidays in this month, and I hope that whatever holiday students and educators and community members celebrate, I hope you have the very best one there is, even if all you're doing is celebrating a week off of school. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and now we will start with board member activities and correspondence, and we are going to start with the very youngest one on the board. And congratulations.
Thank you. On December 6th, CCSGA held the Winter General Assembly. We held a service-orientated workshop and made Linus blankets to give back to the community, and a workshop on parliamentary procedure. It was so amazing to see such a great turnout. Also, on December 6th, I attended the Century High School Coffee Night, featuring some good food, music, and great activities planned by the students at Century. On December 9th, I attended the Maryland Association of Student Council's December Executive Board meeting, where Flamatu Fafana, the CCSGA president, and I gave our regional reports to members of student government across the state. This is a reminder to current freshmen and sophomores in Carroll County that applications for student representative on the Board of Education elect are open and are due on January 26, 2024. Please reach out to your school's SGA advisors if you are interested in this incredible opportunity. I'm also holding virtual interest meetings regarding the position, and the first meeting will be held tomorrow on December 14th at 6 p.m. To register, please reach out to your SGA advisors as well, and there will be more meetings to come. The Schwab primary election will be held at the February General Assembly, and the general election will be held soon after. We hope to see some amazing candidates coming up in the election, and happy holidays to all teachers, students, and staff.
Thank you. Ms. Savigny.
Thanks, Ms. Herbert. The one item that I just wanted to talk briefly about was the Family Life Committee meeting that we had about 2 weeks ago now. It was a very well-attended meeting. I think it's probably the best attendance and participation that we've had to date with that group. Mr. Wernick, I think, is in the room, did an excellent job of leading the discussion, and I just want to thank the parents and educators that are part of that group. Some of the discussions are difficult, but they are good discussions, and we had a lot of feedback, a lot of open conversation, kind of recognizing what's working well, what's not working well. We also recognize that there's a lot of material to try to get through in terms of approving or at least reviewing and providing feedback on all the various lesson plans for the family life units. And so the group came to a decision that in lieu of having additional meetings, right, because that wasn't necessarily what the members of the group agreed to do. Like we agreed to the 4 meetings, but we came up with a very good way of getting feedback around to the group in between meetings. So Mr. Wernick and the other educators that are part of the group, they agreed to get the materials out more in advance to the group, so we have time to review it, provide feedback that can then be circulated around to all the committee members, so that we, in the spirit of okay, there's a lot to get through, and we want to make sure that we truly get the feedback from all of the folks who are engaged. I think it was a really good solution. So just wanted to make you all aware of that. Okay. Really good discussions, really good progress. Excited about the engagement level of that whole group. So just want to thank you, Mr. Wernick, for making that happen and being a very good leader in that process. And thank you to all the community members who are providing their input. And other than that, I know we're launching into, band concert season, choral concert season, various presentations at the schools. Just want to wish all the students a wonderful holiday season throughout all of those activities, and I hope everyone has just a truly beautiful and wonderful holiday season. Thank you.
Ms. Pataglia.
So since our last board meeting, have attended the LAC meeting, which was held at the Career and Technology Center, and that's local businesses that partner with some of our other departments where we're trying to work into internships and apprenticeships. So that's a continuing ongoing discussion. We also had the Security Advisory Council meeting. I attended a veterans dinner at Manchester Valley High School, and Anastasia, their drama production was right after that, and it was a very good show, phenomenal. All of our art departments in our high schools, they had put on some incredible shows this fall and early winter, so I just want to say congratulations to everyone that participated in those. We had a CAC meeting. I attended a bus trip this past Saturday with the Carroll County Farm Bureau to Longwood Gardens, and that was incredibly beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go to Longwood Gardens, it is just spectacular. There's a massive amount of history behind the facility. The lights for the holidays, it's incredibly beautiful, so I do encourage everyone to go. It's nice, family friendly. And some upcoming events. We have our budget works session coming up, various holiday celebrations. There were Girls on the Run occurred earlier this month. Santa breakfast. Okay, let me just say, wow, it's sold out. I have never been to a breakfast at the Career and Technology Center that's sold out. My family and I waited in line for over an hour just to get up to the food. And right behind us, when they're like, we can't do anymore. There's too many people. It was phenomenal, and they had a line from 8 a.m. till 10:30 a.m. when they stopped people coming in. So congratulations to the Career and Technology Center. They, once again, a phenomenal breakfast that they do, and let's do that every time they have one. It's just great. Scholarships are gearing up, so if you have a student who is going into college, start looking about scholarships. Last year, I can tell you, as a mom, we were not prepared. Like, it's no big deal. You could just, application. No, it was a lot more detailed into that. So be prepared. It is detailed. It is timely to do. Work with your senior on it. It's tough, and I'll tell you, it's tough. It's a lot of work. Your seniors will get aggravated. Your seniors will get upset. They will cry. They will want to pull out their hair. They don't want to do it, but make them do it. So it's going to take a little bit, but it'll be okay, I promise. Battle of the Books is getting ready to start up. All the groups are gearing up, and so I'm looking forward to that. So for this month, a lot of people, I always try to tell you what is going on, national or theme-wise, but December is National Impaired Driving Prevention Month. And I think this time of year is really important to continue advocating. Don't drink and drive. Don't drive drugged. If you have a question, don't do it. Find a ride. You can call the sheriff's department. They won't arrest you if you ask them to please take you home. I promise. It's just better to get home safely than take that chance. Don't take the chance. But everyone, please have a wonderful and safe holiday.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
Okay, since our last board meeting, I participated in or attended the following activities. On November 10th, the Veterans Day First Quarter Assembly at Robert Moton Elementary. There was a special program, and it included songs, letters, poems, and music prepared for the veterans and presented by different grade levels. School counselor Megan Napor led the celebration, and Cindy Porter, a veteran and staff member, shared her experience while serving our country. At the end of the assembly, the veterans lined the hallway outside the cafeteria, and while students and staff exited the assembly, we were able to greet and thank the veterans for their service to our country. On Veterans Day, November 11th, I attended a special Veterans Day program in Mount Airy. This was a program where the mayor of Mount Airy presented a governor's memorial citation to a dear friend of mine, Barbara. Barbara was the sister of PFC Ronald Kenny. PFC Ronald Kenny was in the last graduation class of Robert Moton High School, and he was also Carroll County's first casualty of the Vietnam War. So PFC Ronald Kenny made the ultimate sacrifice, and we are grateful to him for his service to our country. On November 14th, I participated in the mock interviews at Carroll County Career and Technology Center. It was a pleasure to provide an interview experience for students and to help them develop career readiness skills and to later receive heartfelt thank you notes from the students, and I thank them for that. The students were impressive as they responded to the questions and feedback. It was rewarding to learn about their goals in life. Our thanks to Ms. Sarah Jones, the Career Connections Coordinator for the Career and Technology Center, for organizing this annual event. On November 16th, I continued with my Veterans Day activities. I was at Liberty High School for their Veterans Day celebration. Thanks to Principal Gauntz and Assistant Principal Megan Brown for organizing this very meaningful celebration of Veterans Day. Breakfast was prepared for the veterans and students in the team leadership class. After breakfast, a ceremony was held in front of the school, and during the ceremony, in addition to patriotic songs and readings, flags were planted and dedicated in a field of flags. After the ceremony, a few veterans shared presentations about their time in the service and lessons learned in life. November 17th, I attended the first meeting of our Curriculum Council for the year. This meeting included presentations on the Blueprints Pillar 1, Early Childhood Education, and our Systems Inclusion Journey. So we thank the presenters, Mrs. Pam Myers and her staff, and Mrs. Whittle and Mrs. Christine Bechtel for presenting to us that day. And as always, we thank Mr. Wernick for organizing and facilitating the meeting. On December 1st, I attended the Equity Council meeting, and in addition to hearing personal lived experiences from 2 council members, data from underrepresented groups was shared, and I thank Dr. Moore for facilitating this meeting for us. And finally, on December 5th, I attended a MABE meeting. Our Executive Director, Milton Nagel, and MABE President, Michelle Corkadell, held a virtual meeting with committee chairs and co-chairs to share MABE's areas of focus for the year and how these areas will impact our committee work for the year. And in closing, my best wishes as well to everyone for a safe, happy holiday.
Mr. Whistler.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone had a terrific Thanksgiving, and more importantly, I hope everyone's enjoying the holiday season as much as they can with family. I had 9 appearances over the past month. On November 10th, I attended the annual Veterans Breakfast at Carroll Hospital. On November 11th, I attended the Veterans Day ceremony at Manchester Valley High School. The staff and students did a wonderful job honoring the many veterans who came out that day to be recognized. On November 14th, I had the honor of conducting mock interviews with my board colleague here, Dr. Dorsey, for many of the students at the Career and Tech Center. I am so proud of our schools and the staff that help students prepare to enter either the workforce or to prepare for technical jobs that will help them in college. The students presented me very impressive portfolios and resumes, and you can tell they put the work in. Later that evening on the 14th, I attended a pathway event at Liberty High School for parents of our future 9th graders. There, the staff did a phenomenal job outlining all the different programs high school students have during their 4-year journey to plan for either college, a technical trade, or immediate entry into the workforce. I really appreciate the staff, once again, staying late to give parents this very important information. On November 22nd, I visited Carroll Springs School yet again to witness our amazing students in a Thanksgiving parade and turkey bowl. It was very fun seeing our staff, students, and the parents celebrating the holidays together. On November 24th, I accepted an invitation from elected officials in Manchester to attend their tree lighting ceremony. My family and I also visited the town's train garden at the fire station and a nativity scene outside a local church. On December 4th, I participated in the Maryland Association Board of Education's Legislative Committee meeting, where we discussed potential bills for the upcoming Maryland legislative session in Annapolis. On December 7th, I witnessed our state delegation's public hearing in the commissioner's meeting room. There were a couple of school PTAs that are requesting legislative bond initiatives to help ensure their playgrounds are inclusive and can accommodate students with disabilities. On December 8th, I attended the Symposium for a Better Carroll at Explorations Commons alongside Mr. Streaker, our Director of Student Services, and Dr. Hart, our Supervisor of Title I Testing and School Performance. Not speaking for them, but I can tell you, I know I appreciated the inspirational message from Dr. Ben Carson that kicked off the event, but I really loved collaborating with nearly 50 leaders in local government, education, healthcare, philanthropy, small business, and local nonprofits to find ways we can better serve those most in need. Finally, I'll close by saying that, this is the time of the year when many make New Year's resolutions. I urge all of our parents and grandparents to consider making a 2024 resolution that involves volunteering in our schools. Please call your school to see if you can help reshelve books in the libraries, serve as a cafeteria monitor so teachers can take a well-deserved break, or simply just get more involved with a school PTA or PTO. I urge you to develop stronger bonds and relationships with our staff. And I'm sure you'll see, like I do, all of the amazing things they do for students in our county. So with that, I'll say Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Before I show a video, I wanted to thank everyone for going to the breakfast last Saturday. That was amazing, and I'm so glad for the principal, Mr. Riddle, and everyone else that was there. And also Mr. Alban, who had retired, was back there making French toast. So that's nice to see that happen. And I also want to thank the family that sent us all a very nice thank you email this week, and we normally don't get a lot of those. And it was particularly from Lytton Springs, and but I do appreciate that because we do read these emails and we do get bashed a lot. But it was really nice to see a thank you from a family, and they were so happy with all of their teachers at that school, and that's what it's all about, taking care of our students. And I also want to thank everybody for all the hard work, teachers, parents, students, for all the choral and holiday concerts, because it does take a lot of work. Actually, I'm missing North Carroll Middles tonight. And I had a Zoom meeting before the MABE State Director, Board of Educators. And I just want to let know, Pat Dorsey doesn't know this, but the conference came up. And there were so many kudos of how wonderful you worked hard and directed and completed that conference, and everyone thought you were the main person. So even though she was not, it was a group effort, but you got a lot of kudos. So I wanted to let you know that. So yes. So at this time, I'd like to do something different. During the 2022-23 school year, Mike Campanelli, he's a masonry teacher at the Career and Tech Center, began a weekly series entitled Career and Tech Spotlight, which recognizes outstanding students. Do any of you know this goes on? Yes. Some do, some don't. So I think we really need to see what goes on. Mr. Campanelli reaches out to instructors to identify students to be featured. Last year, Carroll Education TV, known as CETV, began partnering with the Career and Tech Center to produce videos for social media and Channel 21. CETV has completed 12 videos this year with the help of Kelsey Thomas, who videotapes and edits the segments, while Kathy Shipley provides the script and voiceover. The videos can be seen on social media, the CETV and the CNTC YouTube channels, and Channel 21. This year's shows will be playing on Channel 21 in January. Tonight, I would like to show you one of the video highlights you all are missing, and this one is Mechanical Engineering Program. Take it away, Miss Brenda.
Career and Technology Center, students from all over Carroll County come together to gain technical skills in numerous specialized programs. Every day, these students are excelling, and we want to highlight some of these remarkable students. Today's student is Reed Bartles. Reed is a senior at Manchester Valley High School and a member of the Applied Mechanical Engineering program. At Manchester Valley, he plays soccer, basketball, and lacrosse. At Career and Tech, Reed states that his favorite part of the AME program is the freedom of manufacturing and designing using CAD and CAM software and getting the certifications to prepare for college. AME instructor Tim Blizzard says, Reed is an outstanding young man both academically and in the shop environment. He is always prepared for work and ready to help whenever needed. Reed has helped several of his fellow students with projects while continuing his own work. He is highly motivated and a self-starter. He will do extremely well as a mechanical engineer. When Reed is not in school or working at Rita's, he loves to play lacrosse, play video games, and hang out with his Shih Tzu, Hersey. After graduation, he will be attending Messiah University to major in mechanical engineering and play lacrosse.
Thank you, Brenda, for sharing that. This is what we're all about, and so many people miss this information of how wonderful Carroll County Public Schools are. So I just wanted to thank everybody and thank Miss Carey and everyone that helped get all this together for me tonight. But we have so many good things that go on in Carroll County Public School systems, and I want everybody to see all this. Thank you. At this time, we will have the superintendent's report.
I'd like to begin this evening by congratulating Michelle Rogers, a parent from Liberty High School, who recently received the National Nikki Hines Award presented by the Pennsylvania Coalition for Parent Involvement. Michelle is an active parent, family engagement resource, and family and school advocate who shows great enthusiasm, compassion for students and families, and commitment to student success. She has taken the lead in organizing many special events, including forums for parents, as well as Board of Education candidate forums. She also has worked in coordination with health organizations, law enforcement, and school system resources to present virtual and in-person drug awareness programs. Michelle is a longtime member of the Carroll County Community Advisory Council, which is appointed by the Board of Education and includes a representative from every school in the county. She currently serves as the council's chairperson. In addition, she was one of the founding members and an executive board member of the Carroll County Council of Parent Organizations. Again, congratulations to Michelle on this recognition for all of the tremendous contributions she has made to the school system. It is truly well-deserved. I also would like to congratulate Kyle Boone, Noah Harmon, Nico Marsicano, and Gavin Rogers from the Masonry program at the Career and Technology Center for receiving MortarNet scholarships. Each student received a tool bag filled with masonry-related tools and swag, a group scoop, premium levels, and $350 spending money to purchase any construction-related gear. The total value of each tool bag is over $1,300.
Good for them.
Each year, the Maryland State Legislature invites high school seniors throughout the state to serve as pages for the House of Delegates and Senate. Congratulations to the students who will represent Carroll County Public Schools. Ryan Cave, South Carroll High School. Flamadu Fafano, Liberty High School. Our very own Sahithya Sudakar, Liberty High School, and Sean Elam, South Carroll High School. The program enables high school seniors selected by a local committee to work as legislative pages for 2 non-consecutive weeks during the regular session of the legislature. It is designed to interest youth in state government, particularly in the proceedings of the Maryland legislature. And finally, I would like to extend my best wishes to each and every one of you for a safe and happy holiday season. I hope that you enjoy this special time with family and friends and that you have a very happy new year.
Thank you. And at this time, we will have a presentation, blueprint overview. Dr. McCabe.
Each month, when there are important updates, we provide you with an overview of key Blueprint implementation updates. Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Shockney have some important updates this evening for your information and for any discussion.
There's a bit of a buzz going here in the crowd tonight over this. Yeah. So pretty frequently we'll bring you updates, and a lot of times they might be focused in on one of the Blueprint pillars. Tonight, one item is, but the first three things we're going to talk about, and we're going to do all this in a very exciting fashion in 10 minutes or less, minus questions. The first three things are kind of broader than just any one pillar, starting now. And this first slide talks about flexibility of implementation, and these are four pretty just broad bullet points, but there's a lot of meaning and a lot of value here. And as usual, I'm not gonna sort of read them to you, but kind of the sort of framing of the impact of the blueprint that our superintendent began a spring ago. And at that time, I seem to even remember maybe some people coming here for comment and saying, you're the only school system, in its perspective, I guess, but complaining or raising concerns. That's no longer the case. And our concerns aren't with, philosophically everything in the blueprint at that time. It was just sort of trying to look ahead and understand what are the sort of the implications of true accountability under the blueprint and what that might mean for how schools are organized and arranged. And Dr. McCabe was out in front of that. The rest of Maryland has caught up to that understanding, and I think that conversation now is very much part of the statewide framing of the blueprint. And it doesn't mean that we're not trying to do the blueprint or anything like that. It just means we need to fully understand what some of the consequences might be for certain parts of it. And we spent a lot of time talking about fiscal compliance and what that might mean in terms of staffing shifts or changes. That was sort of the one aspect we highlighted. But in general, the need just to understand that as you're undertaking a legislative program to kind of redefine how pre-K through 12 education works in our schools, all of those steps and all of those program changes and the fiscal accountability parts need to come with a balance of reasonableness. And, how do you get there with fidelity, but in the right way that you don't cause some disruption that's unnecessary, unintended? That's a theme everywhere. It's reflected in various ways. MABE recently did a stakeholder survey that was broader than just school systems or boards of ed. You could tease that theme out of those responses. I think you're starting, especially for Mr. Whistler, Mrs. Herbert, who are part of the MABE Legislative Committee, you're seeing that become part of MABE's legislative themes, and other, school system by school system. We're all sort of in one voice now saying the same things, and you're starting to see it in state guidance as well. So the AIB has done some online meetings on the career ladder lately, and at least in those presentations, they're recognizing that that's a complex thing. And there's, Ms. Jordan talked about collaborative work, which I agree with, but there's still a ways to go. And so maybe that all can't get done by some sort of arbitrary date certain. Maybe there needs to be some phasing of that. That's an example. The local implementation plan, which is due every year, the draft template's out for next year, and there's another slide on this, so without going into too much detail, it also recognizes kind of a phased approach and sort of a backward and frontward looking way. And then back to Dr. McCabe's town halls and the impact of fiscal compliance. The good news is here, and this will be the first time we're saying this broadly tonight, although we are sharing it with stakeholders as we intersect with them. This means that sort of the worst case scenario that we were seeing, the possibility of shifting, maybe 400 employees, depending on if our math was correct and how we were viewing fiscal compliance, we know now that that's not going to occur. There is not going to be a penalty from the state for being out of fiscal compliance in fiscal 25, the next fiscal year coming. Fiscal year 25 reporting of budgets is going to be about setting a baseline, which is a good thing to understand, okay, under the law and how it's interpreted, what is the actual gap? Is our math, is our best estimate correct? Is it more, is it less, that sort of thing. And then hopefully, we're not there yet in terms of what they're sharing, but then hopefully, okay, how do you move forward from that baseline in a reasonable way to make your programs work and to come into compliance. So we now know that we won't be shifting hundreds of employees or dozens of employees, whatever it would have been. We've shared that with our colleagues at CCA. We'll be sharing that with principal groups, and that's good news. And it doesn't mean that we don't have to come into compliance over time. It just means that we don't have that, we don't have to confront that sort of very significant challenge or upheaval that we were kind of worried about back when we were holding the town hall meetings in the spring. So those are 4 broad bullet points, but with a lot of power and a lot of meaning behind them, and hopefully some relaxation of anxieties for some employees as we look forward to
Dr. Dorsey.
This
I just
doesn't
wanted to
count.
share that this is pretty major.
Yes, huge.
And again, I appreciate hearing it and, the impact that it will have on us. Again, it's just really major. Not that we, again, will be ignoring what we have to do, but now we see that we'll have a little more flexibility, a little more time to actually phase in the requirements. So again, it's pretty major.
Absolutely, Dr. Dorsey. And if you really listen to what we said, other than maybe just a sentence here or there, what the superintendent was saying was, we're just looking for flexibility and reasonableness overall. And it seems like, maybe there always was it just wasn't articulated yet, but now there's clarity that that's kind of how this whole thing is hopefully going to move forward as a state. Second update, you've also heard the superintendent say we really sure would like some help from the state, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of assistance. And so the AIB used some of their blueprint funding, so this is not local funding in Carroll or any other school system, and has through kind of what they call a grant process, is awarding a strategic facilitator for blueprint implementation to any of the 24 LEAs or local school systems who wanted to participate. Dr. McCabe and staff did want to participate. It's kind of an interesting arrangement. It's not our employee. It's not really even their employee. It's sort of a range of consultants that the AIB engaged, and then there was a bit of a matching process, so to speak, with the locals. But we're very pleased to announce that we have an AIB strategic facilitator, Dr. Frank Grossman. We've been doing a lot of the preliminary work with Dr. Grossman. Some of that's just the paperwork and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, but the planning part of that has begun in earnest as well. And just very, very pleased so far in engaging him and getting to know him, not just me, but others who've been involved, and getting a clear sense that he's a career-long educator with lots of vast and interesting experiences, and so he gets the school system. He understands it. He understands what we're saying we see as some of our challenges. And then to be fair to Dr. Grossman, as eventually I'm sure you'll engage with him some, also saying, and we still have to do the work. So it's fun to point out the challenges, but let's think about the work, and our messaging will be to be careful not to make promises to stakeholder groups, but at the same time, I think a point that I've heard Dr. Grossman make many times to me is you gotta get the ideas out there to see which ones are feasible, which ones aren't, which ones will work, and which ones might work or not work, but maybe some can with modification. And so that's a good message. So as long as we manage expectations, I think we're a question.
Dr. Dorsey again.
Again, I'm wondering about Dr. Grossman and how he spread out. I mean, is he working only with our school system, or is he assigned to other school systems?
Dr. Grossman is working with Carroll and one other school system, and I believe this is public knowledge and free to say.
Well, if you don't know, maybe don't. But
I don't see why
just
it
to know
wouldn't
that
be.
he's working with maybe another system.
Well, you know what? They can come get me. He's working with us and with Dorchester County on the Eastern Shore, and so that's a nice, sort of difference and distinction.
Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, if I can say, I don't think the parents and maybe even all the teachers understand. We've been socializing these concerns with other boards of education around the state, and the work that you have done, the superintendent has done to clearly lay these things out, it really paid off, and I really appreciate you. I know our parents appreciate you because it's going to mitigate an explosion in class sizes, and I know a lot of teachers are probably very thankful because that means they don't have to trek to different schools next year. So I really appreciate your efforts to put this high on the priority list, and it's just good to see that flexibility may be on the way. Thank you.
Ms. Savigny.
Just a couple of comments to echo that. As you had alluded to earlier, John, like previously at prior board meetings, we had some folks come kind of insinuating that, the fact that we are raising our hands, raising alarm bells, saying there's issues here. They thought that meant that we were behind on implementation, but we are actually well ahead of the game, and we're recognizing the concerns and the issues well ahead of time, and just trying to bring others up to speed. And I want to thank you, John. I want to thank you, Dr. McCabe, and all of staff. And you've done an outstanding job of just helping us, the board, the community, the educators get our arms around what this all means, and it's fantastic to see Mr. Grossman working with us. I'm glad to hear that it's a positive experience, that he actually is understanding what our concerns are, and totally agree that we need to do the work. Like, we never said that we needed to do the work, but just understanding what the obstacles and the constraints are, and how do we achieve this in a reasonable way and with flexibility, which is really all you've been saying from the very beginning, Ms. McCabe. So thank you so much, John.
So thank you. So, and I'll pass that credit to Cindy and all the folks here who are really doing the work. And to those points, sometimes public meetings are relegated kind of to budget discussions or intergovernmental collaborative discussions. There is a lot of work going on, and there's a lot more work still to do, and a lot of folks are doing that work. I think now, with this understanding of some flexibility, we can turn our attention to sharing that out more and getting feedback on that. And we're excited to have Dr. Grossman joining us. And I don't feel like we've ever been a place afraid of ideas, new and different ideas, thinking outside the box, doing more with less, and having another set of eyes to help us with that. We're now embracing that as a very good thing. So that's starting soon in a much more informed way. Lastly, the AIB has released the new, there's this annual blueprint implementation plan. Last year's was the first one, and it was sort of I think it was sort of a new experience for all of us from the AIB down. That plan was 100 pages of pretty specific prompts or required data. The draft, which is public, it's still labeled as draft, but it's public, is very different. There'll be much more to come on this in future updates. It is a little bit more iterative, meaning the due date of March 15 is still in the law, but what the AIB is asking for in this new version is by March 15, some systemic overall blueprint implementation prompts being answered, but the bulk of the plan to come later, which is very helpful when you're trying to plan with meaning and engage stakeholders. Also, this version is the first one where it's both a look back at what were some of the things you had in last year's plan and where are you with them, but also kind of setting some 3-year measures of blueprint implementation into the future. And they're telling us in various sessions that this will be a kind of a living process, that it's not. I have some comfort that it's not to be viewed as if you said next year you were going to accomplish X and you turn out to accomplish X minus 5. There's not going to be some harsh reaction to that. It's going to be about fidelity and making progress and working towards the goals. So more to come on that. But even in that example, there is. An acknowledgement of some flexibility and how every system might not be the same, and sort of within the context define your own goals. And now I would like to let Mr. Shockney talk about a topic of great.
I would like to say one other thing first, that Dr. McCabe and her team, including you all, you were always out in front. And I'll never forget, people looked at us like we had 4 heads when she was giving these presentations, these town halls, like, what are you all talking about? But she was only telling the truth. And then finally, the other people got on board. And as always, Carroll County is always leading. And I thank you, Dr. McCabe, for that. And that's the truth.
All right, so to talk a little bit about college and career readiness, which is important and exciting, but Mr. O'Neill does a great job hyping that up for me.
You have 10 minutes.
I'll be super quick, I promise.
We're already over.
Will not be 10 minutes. So just, and again, I think this gets along the theme of some of the other components of the blueprint that we've talked about that we need to be mindful of, but it could change and evolve over time. College and Career Readiness Standard, or the CCR standard, is a great example of that. Right now, the Maryland State Board of Education is considering action on a new CCR standard. We're currently functioning within an interim CCR standard. I'll get into that in the next slide about what that's going to look like. But it's been discussed. They commissioned a research study to take a look at the standard that exists, and the current standard, which I'll jump to right now, is based upon performance on MCAP. In order for a student to be considered CCR, they need to score a 3 or 4 on essentially a 3 or 4 on the MCAP in both English 10 and one of the 3 mathematics courses there. It gets very complicated because there are students who during the period of the pandemic were exempt, so there's a lot of qualifiers there. But essentially, the interim standard is proficiency in English and math by the end of grade 10. Why does this matter? This matters because funding is tied to our current CCR standard. We receive approximately $517. It's a wealth equalized calculation for each student who meets the CCR standard. So that matters. The CCR standard is also a metric in the draft strategic plan that we've been discussing over the last couple of months for CCPS. There was an initial proposal to change the interim standard, and that is to bring in GPA. The research study that MSDE commissioned concluded that a student's GPA is a clear indicator of college and career readiness. So there's a little bit of a flow chart as it looks like on the left is where we kind of currently are to what the next revision is to include a GPA, which then got tweaked a little bit further into kind of where we stand with the current state board proposal under consideration. So essentially, a student becomes CCR if they have a GPA of 3.0 or higher and they earned an A, B, or C in Algebra 1, or they also are proficient on the English 10 MCAP and then the Algebra 1 MCAP. Either or, okay? So it's been widely discussed and debated. The state board has acknowledged themselves that while this may be a great indicator of college readiness, there's been some question about what does this mean for career readiness. Many of our students exit CCPS career ready, ready to enter the world of work. So there's been lots of discussion as to whether or not this standard truly captures career readiness as well. So this is a good example to stay tuned. Funding will continue to be tied to this. At some point in time, as the blueprint is currently written, in order for a student to enter a pathway, an AP pathway, a CTE pathway, a early college pathway, they have to meet the CCR standard. Okay? If they don't, they enter a support pathway until they reach that CCR standard. So that's where it stands now, but I do think there's a lot that can happen. There's no timeline for when that will become a requirement to enter a pathway. The AIB, the current statute stands as the AIB. When the AIB determines that the blueprint has been fully implemented is when the CCR requirement will come into play. So we bring this to you for your attention to review, but again, something we'll keep a close eye on. The board has not taken any action yet. There's been lots of discussion. I do envision that it may continue to evolve and be revised over time.
Ms. Savigny.
And thanks, Mr. Shockney. I mean, to your point about that's college and career ready,
right?
Is there significant discussion going on about how to maybe put something in there for CTE or?
Most definitely. I think that as the state board was, I don't want to speak for them, but my observations, they were discussing. Several board members acknowledged that this could be a challenge for our students who are putting into careers out of high school. So I do think that there could be a revision to that as time goes on, but we shall see. So obviously something we're monitoring very carefully. This is why it's a metric in our strategic plan. I got some information just today at an assistant superintendent's meeting this morning, which gives me a little bit more clarity as to how the data is going to be calculated, because there was a question for me about ninth graders, and Would it apply to ninth graders who maybe took Algebra 1 in 8th grade and maybe had a 3.0 or higher in their ninth grade year, but it's 10th grade on? I got that answer today clearly. So that might help us revise our baseline data a little bit more in our plan. But no doubt about it, I think there is discussion. I think there will be continued discussion as to the standard for not only college readiness, but for career readiness as well.
Ms. Battaglia?
Mr. Stockton, do you know if they're looking at the potential of learning loss having a factor in any of this? And the reason why I bring it up is because the more and more we're seeing, some of the scores starting to come out, or even from last year regarding Algebra 1 and understanding the English, it seems like the ones that were like 5th, middle school, that are now entering into the high school age or in high school age, they're the ones that had that tremendous learning loss mostly, and also social loss too. But I think, is that something they're going to be looking at too, to make sure, hey, this is something we might want to be careful with?
I think we're always looking at those gaps that happen as a result of the pandemic. As it relates to the CCR standard, I don't know if there'll be some sort of a calculation or some sort of factor for learning loss that existed. I think if you went back to the interim standard that exists now, there is, but this is also a future standard that doesn't yet exist. So I would assume that the spirit is the further down the road we go, we've narrowed through other strategies and supports, the gaps from the pandemic, as we are always striving to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will go on to reports, and the first one of the evening is construction. Mr. Marks.
For the monthly construction report, I wanted to note some updates to the East Middle project. At last month's meeting, I shared that after a fairly smooth process that allowed us to get the new East Middle School facility opened in time for the school year, we had encountered our first significant issue on the site. A vein of rock was uncovered on the site where the permanent parking area and bus loop will be located. Working with our construction manager for the project, our staff determined that the most efficient and effective way to address the rock vein was through blasting. I noted that the project has been successful but was tracking right at the overall budget. The need to remove the vein of rock caused us to need to pause and work out details with our construction manager and how to best proceed with the site work. I had asked our staff to work with our construction manager and develop a comprehensive plan for me to consider that would address costs for the rock removal, but also any other remaining aspects of the project, as well as an overall budget plan. I am pleased that they were able to develop a plan for my approval that addressed the project comprehensively as I requested. There are 2 action items later on tonight's agenda that reflect that overall plan. There is a change order in the amount of $600,000 to cover the cost of the rock removal. By policy, change orders of over $50,000 require board approval. So this action is necessary by policy. Then there is a CIP transfer that moves funds from various other CIP projects to finalize the East Middle project budget to finish the project, including the rock removal and other contingencies. This will come as individual action items, but I thought it would help to explain the overall situation during the construction report. Any questions?
Ms. Savigny.
Didn't even have to put my card
Mr.
up,
Marks,
Ms.
come on up.
Thanks, just leave it down. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put it away.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Marks. I'm sure you're not surprised that I have a lot of questions.
No problem at all. Happy to be here.
So I appreciate that there's been a lot of work and a lot of discussion going into this. I just feel that we need to ask some questions in public just to make sure that folks understand and know that we did the due diligence behind all of this.
Sure.
Because $600,000 is a lot of money, and I struggle with this decision because it's not something that directly impacts student achievement, right? So I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence here. But so I know that a lot of this harkens back to when we did, we were looking at value engineering for the East Middle School project. There were a lot of things we were trying to meet a budget, a total budget, and there were things that got pulled out. One of the things I was trying to understand was, I thought this contract was bid on an unclassified basis, meaning that there's at-risk components, right, for the general contractor.
It's for site work, not so much.
Okay, so site work is not part of.
Correct.
Not part
They
of that.
clarified in the GMP, and it's very common for this, that they classified any rock discovered to be classified. So the rest of the site would be unclassified. So basically, yes, you're correct. Unclassified basically means they have all the risk of what they encounter with that area. But rock is something that you just don't always know it's going to happen. You don't always know if you had enough drilling to know what's beneath. So they clarified that it was classified for rock. And they put an allowance in the contract that we felt was sufficient for what we might find from what drilling we did do.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the allowance, and they also had clarified all that with unit prices in the contract. So when we first discovered this vein, we felt we were okay with what contingencies they had in their allowances also. It became too much, as Dr. McCabe had mentioned, but that's why we paused it. So we were able to renegotiate, come up with other ideas to minimize this and try to get this parking lot and bus loop done as soon as possible so we don't delay and cause more costs of general condition extensions, excuse me, if we went into summer. So that would have been worse. So that's what we met with the CM many times, our own staff, engineers, everybody, trying to figure out ways to do that. And we even brought out a giant hydraulic breaker to spend some days on productivity with the rock with that versus blasting. That didn't prove well. It proved that it was going to take too long, cost too much, and have more risk of delayed into the spring and summer to get the final bus loop done.
Okay.
That's part of it. So I don't know if that helps totally, but that's...
It does help. I mean, I guess just trying to make sure that, we're not, I don't want to use this, it's an inflammatory word, but you just make sure that we're not being fleeced, right?
Yes.
Like,
Well, that's our job. That's what we always do is try to look after CCPS and our interests first to minimize costs. We were able to get that unit price that was in the contract reduced by 50% for the rest of the blasting that we resumed. And for mass rock, we call it mass rock is generalized rock, and then you have trench rock, which is deeper, okay, for the utilities, for the stormwater lines. So we reduced it by 50%, which got us to those levels that you're seeing now. It was way worse.
okay.
This was much worse. And that's why we caused a pause into it, so we could sit down and come up with options and, come to some negotiations to try to make the best overall outcome.
Okay. So the rock has been measured. We know how
Yes.
many cubic yards we're talking about,
Yes.
and the do you know the price per cubic yard that?
Yes, we've reduced it down to $99 a cubic yard. That includes the blasting and burying it on site. Discovery, the drilling, the blasting, burying it on site, which saved us a lot of money also, versus hauling it off site.
Okay, you said $99 per cubic yard. Okay.
Yeah.
Has that been peer reviewed? Because I reached out to our friendly neighborhood commissioner who
Yes.
has experience in
Yes.
this regard, and
Yes.
he was quoting numbers a lot less than that as a typical charge per cubic yard.
I don't know if it includes everything that we had with it, though.
That
Yes,
might have
if you
been
hired
just for the removal. I don't know.
correct.
on
If
that.
you hired somebody just to come out and do the blasting operation by itself, that's much less. But that 99 includes a lot more of what they have to do with this.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So I mean, he was quoting numbers in like the $15 per
Oh, no,
cubic
yeah,
yard.
that's a small portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the $600,000 change order you're seeing is a not to exceed number with the unit prices. We're hoping it's less than that. When you drill to blast, you're not able to drill the exact science of the geography below you in one shot. You're kind of following it, blasting it, following it, blasting it. But we've completed our blasting efforts this week. We believe we don't need to come back and blast anymore. So that's good news.
Okay. And so there was a lot less haul off
Yeah.
cost than we had originally anticipated.
Of regular dirt, other dirt?
I think the regular project, is that true?
Yes. Oh, burying the rock, yes, yes, yes. We buried the rock with this effort versus hauling it off-site, which was very expensive.
Okay, and so that's already been factored into
That's what
cost.
lowered our price dramatically from what we already had in the contract.
Okay, okay.
We can talk to Mr. Kyler and find out where his $15 is coming from. Be happy to.
Okay.
Well,
The
we were
wealth of
between,
knowledge.
this is a cliche, we were between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
We definitely were.
Absolutely.
But I am so glad that you all stopped, renegotiated, and went forward and saved us money in the long end when you were able to bury the rock right on site, because
Yes.
once you start hauling it off, it is very expensive. But there was no winner in this.
No, and we also, with other options, like using the hydraulic hammers, we had a giant case hammer out there that was blowing over 10,000 foot-pounds of force. It's very noisy, disruptive to the students and staff and the neighbors, and slow.
Yeah. Mr. Whistler.
So,
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for going the extra mile. I've had conversations with Westminster council members and also residents in the area, and I appreciate the proactive efforts that you've done to let them know what's going on and keeping them informed. And thanks for being a good neighbor to them.
no problem. It's all about that, right? We're all a community.
Yeah, when John O'Neill goes to your house
Yes.
to make sure everything's okay.
I did that a
Yes.
couple of times, surprised some folks. Back to Mrs. Savigny's point, I'm probably stealing some of Dr. McCabe's thunder when you get to the action item for the, well, for either one, but for the transfer. All budget transfers have to cross the street within 30 days for their approval. We'll connect with Mr. Kyler anyway, but that's coming their way in 30 days. So we'll grab him tomorrow or whenever he's free and just make sure he's comfortable with those prices. I think probably the difference, just guessing, is he's talking about a portion of what Jim mentioned, either hauling or blasting, but not hauling, blasting, burying on site,
Right.
that sort of thing. I think we'll
Okay.
be fine, but we'll verify that with him before it comes to them.
I think that would be a beneficial discussion to have with them, so I appreciate that. And
Oh, he'll tell us.
Oh, yeah. He's a wealth of knowledge.
So, and I think one of the things that happened is that, you know, when we were going through all of when we were trying to hit the budget for the East Middle School project in totality, we knew that everything was escalating dramatically through the COVID times, for construction, and so we were trying to figure out what can we pull out in order to hit budget. And one of the things that we did was we pulled out, what was it, Mr. O'Neill, $1 million for the owner's contingency, which is what this would fall under, right?
Correct. We dropped $1 million in owner contingency.
Right,
to help
so
the
if we
project.
had not pulled that out, we'd still be within,
Yeah, and this is all just coincidence, I promise, but the overall CIP transfer you'll vote on tonight is $1 million and change. It's a wash, basically. If we hadn't had to, if you hadn't had to make that decision to meet budget to start the project, you'd be whole. We would have made it just there at the whole budget. So
Okay.
they line up the same.
okay. So we were trying to make some tough decisions at that time, and I think we had taken out
We
a
did,
lot more than
yes.
just that
yes.
million. There were
We took out
several,
$5 million
yeah,
in value
several million.
engineering, $1 million in furniture and equipment, $1 million contingency and other things.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and I don't want any of these questions to, insinuate that I didn't think that you guys have done a fantastic job of kind of looking at all the options, and bringing to us a recommendation. I just wanted to make sure that we had these discussions and asked these questions, so the public could hear it. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And now we will move on to the Transportation Services Benchmark Report.
So in December each year, we provide the board with a transportation benchmark report. We use the data in this report to understand the efficiency of our overall operations and identify areas for focus. Mr. Hardesty will note some highlights and respond to any questions.
Good evening, board members. Our annual benchmarking report looks at operational performance in the prior school year and compares that with the previous school year to that, and goes back and looks at trends over many school years prior to last school year. Very helpful to us to see how we're doing operationally, and looking at some of those trends. So just some brief highlights, and again, if you have any questions about any specific chart in the report. I'd be happy to answer those questions. You'll notice that our cost per student, cost per bus, cost per mile has all increased significantly, and that is due primarily to inflationary increases to the formula that you approve each May. The cost of fuel rose significantly. You'll see, I think in the chart, it's about a $4.60 cost on average for last school year. Thankfully, it's a lot lower than that now. Inflationary increases in the cost of a school bus. The prime interest rate rose substantially over the prior school year. They are factors that influence the PVA, which is the reimbursement to the contractor for the purchase of their bus. On the positive side, I think we can say it's a positive that the overall formula, when you look at a 5-hour and 80-mile route and a 6-hour and 80-mile route, which are typical school bus routes across the state, that we are the 4th highest in terms of total compensation to our contractors when compared to the 17 counties, Maryland, Carroll being one of those, that uses a reimbursement formula to compensate private bus contractors. And that we remained the 4th. We were also the 4th last year. We rose from about 6 to 4. So I think that's a very good thing for our contractors. On a positive side, too, our ridership has increased to almost to where it was pre-COVID. So we're very pleased with that. We'd like to get it up higher. About 75% of students that are eligible for riding are actually riding the school bus. And that's based upon our March manifest and student rider counts. You'll also notice that we're also pleased that the number of certified drivers increased last year by 15, and that reversed a trend for about 3 or 4 years where we were steadily declining in the number of overall certified drivers. We still have a serious driver shortage issue across the county, and it's certainly affecting some of our larger contractors more so than others. And finally, you'll also notice that the number of citations issued through our bus patrol cameras is not going down. We are averaging still about 50 per day across the county on about 250 route buses that are out there every single day.
Can you repeat that?
50 citations are being identified by the external bus cameras. Now, not all of those citations result in an actual payment by the violator. They all are reviewed by the sheriff's office, and then it's decided as to whether it's a valid citation. Some of them I have disagreements with in terms of them throwing them out, but the law reads a motorist must stop 20 feet approaching the school bus. So if the lights turn red as they enter in that 20-foot distance, they're not fined.
I see it all the time.
Yeah.
42. It's like a dragway.
But it's still, I mean, 50 a day is quite alarming. So we're hoping, over time, we see a decrease in that number. Yeah.
I do have a question about activity buses. How many spare buses do we have? We don't have 54. That says that's a combination.
Right.
We only have a couple, right?
Well, we have 54 buses that are not on everyday routes, and they include 27 that are athletic buses.
Right, that's, yes,
buses
okay.
that are being used for field trips.
All right, okay.
And others are just specifically spare buses.
Yeah, and yes, we need bus drivers.
Yes, we do.
And I cannot say that just because the numbers show, that might be a driver that drives once a week or once a month for somebody, but we do not have hundreds of bus drivers that are driving. So anybody that wants a job, yeah, we'll take teachers also, and custodians, we'll take them all. So I just need to put a plug in it for it general, but yes, definitely we need help.
A large number of the certified drivers that you see listed in the report are sub-drivers.
Right.
So they're just driving in the morning or maybe 2 days a week. They're not drivers that are on the bus morning and afternoon every single day. So yes, we welcome all subs and full-time drivers, but we need drivers.
Absolutely. Dr. Dorsey.
I have a question concerning, the red lights, the flashing red lights. prior to the lights turning red, they have the yellow flashing lights on.
Yeah, yes.
And whenever I see the yellow flashing lights, I want to stop because I'm not sure how soon they're going to be coming to a stop with the red light. So is there a requirement for how long that yellow flashing light is on?
The state law requires the yellow flashing lights to be activated at least 100 feet before the red lights need to be activated at the bus stop. Now, depending on the speed of the road, those yellow lights maybe should be activated 500 feet or 400 feet, but at a minimum, state law requires 100 feet.
I'm just always afraid when I see the yellow, I want to stop on the yellow.
Please do.
Yes, please.
And that's one of my problems with some of these violations not being resulting in citations, because there was plenty of time for the yellow lights to warn the motorists to stop. But they got within 20 feet of the bus when the red lights were activated, and therefore they were absolved from the fine.
Whenever I happen to be on the road, when if I'm like coming towards a bus, like my foot is actually poised on the brake, like, okay, are the lights going to go off?
Okay.
Mr.
Yes.
Hardesty, do you mind if I ask?
No, go ahead,
a
Ms.
couple questions?
Savigny.
On the very first page, I don't think we have page. Oh, there are the page numbers. So on page 2, it shows miles paid, and can you help me understand what's the difference between miles paid versus miles driven, and do those track pretty closely together?
Right. Our calculation, or the numbers that you see there, are based on the miles that are actually paid. So we have odometer readings, but we are using a system that is based upon our pay system. So actual miles we can calculate at each. We have 3 inspections during the year. We receive odometer readings during those inspections, so we could actually see what each bus is doing. But the only way to really get close to a number that would mean anything is through our pay system.
Okay. Gotcha.
And I did go to the last bus inspection.
Yes, you did.
I don't tell that, but yeah. It was a beautiful day out, so it was great.
Well, I'm also looking at page 4. Is it possible to bring that page up? There we go, thanks.
This one?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you see so this is the average cost per regular ed bus route. So it was fairly steady for a couple of years, and then we had the big increase in 2022 when we made our changes to the formula, correct?
Correct.
But then it jumped up a lot again in 2023. Is that because of like the number of kids per route, or is that continued changes to the formula, or what's driving that?
Well, we've reduced the number of buses as a result of the driver shortage. So that makes the cost per bus go up just by reducing the number of buses. But the main issue here is the increase in compensation based upon the cost of the bus. So what the contractor has to pay for a new bus has gone up substantially, similar to what you've seen with automobiles. I mean, the prices of buses are now getting close to $150,000 for a regular ed bus to meet our specifications. So that's the primary thing, but I mentioned too the prime interest rate, which is a factor that goes into our PVA calculation. That has also increased, and you'll see when I'm here next year, there's going to be another increase because the prime rate, we get the prime interest rate as of October 1st of each year for the subsequent year's PVA. And it went up by 2% from last year to this year.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to understand whether it was primarily inflation on the cost per bus, or if there was something else kind of adding to that piece.
There
of
was
it.
a reduction in the number of buses and the inflationary increases.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have a bus on the award of bids, and it's 160 some, so they're not getting any cheaper.
No, they're not.
And so have we factored that in? So for next year, when we do the budgetary, when we work up the budget, it's going to have to include, expected inflationary increases.
Yes, we do that.
Do we have, so we have the anticipation of what's going to happen with those costs built into next year?
We've gotten from the 3 bus manufacturers what they're charging currently for a bus that would go into service next year. Buses have to be ordered now, or even before now, to be assured that they're received prior to the start of next school year. So we know what the prices are going to be for buses that need to go into service next year now.
Right. Okay.
And thankfully, the Fed's not been raising rates lately. So today they came out and
Yeah.
held rates again.
Right,
So,
yeah, right.
But the Fed increasing rates is really impacting this.
Any other questions? Okay, keep going.
But it looked like you had.
No, it's okay. You go ahead first.
But we have two. with
So
the
on the
hearts
next
up.
on the next page, it looks like the students transported on special needs buses that dropped way off during the pandemic, but it never bounced back to the original levels.
No, and that's because we used to include the pre-K students because they rode many special needs buses, particularly midday. And now with all of our pre-K programs being full day, they are no longer riding our special needs buses.
Okay,
So that's the
gotcha.
major factor there.
Okay. Yeah, you had the comment here, but I didn't quite understand how those went together. So, okay, thank you
Sure.
for that. And then you were talking about, the cost of fuel going up pretty dramatically. You certainly see that a couple of pages later. What are we assuming for, working up the budget for 2024?
I've built in about $3.50 per gallon, I believe. But I'll consult with Mr. Burke and we'll come up with what we think is a reasonable estimate.
Okay, gotcha.
And everyone needs to realize that's diesel fuel, not unleaded
That's
fuel.
diesel fuel, yes. I mean, it's right now, it's close to $4 every place I've seen for diesel, so.
It is.
Okay, go
Okay.
ahead, Tyra.
We've got two, one on each side, which I don't care who goes first. Go ahead, Miss. Go ahead.
Okay. Do we happen to maybe reevaluate the space on the buses? What I mean by, like, let's say come December, you notice that one bus that has a bunch of open seats to it. So do you possibly look into combining some bus routes to save on anything? Or, I mean, I know, a parent might say it's an inconvenient for them because then they're going to have to wait a little bit longer and the bus route might change for their kid. But, I mean, to me, that would kind of make a little sense to potentially change something there.
Well, we're constantly monitoring ridership, particularly at the beginning of the year because it fluctuates from year to year. I don't want to say we're surprised, but sometimes we are surprised by a community producing more students than what we would normally see at a certain level, an elementary level, for instance. Maybe we have more kindergartners than we had, expected based on prior years' experience. High school fluctuates quite a bit, depending on the sports seasons, participants, and other extracurricular activities. But we're constantly monitoring that and adjusting where necessary. We have reduced about 19 buses in the last 10 years over the 40 bus reduction that we did in the 12-13 school year when we changed all the bell times. And every time we reduce, that means that we're consolidating other bus routes. We're taking a section of a bus route and putting it on another bus so that every student has a ride, and we are more efficient. But this was done primarily to address the driver shortage problem. And this school year, you'll see in the report next year, we've reduced even more buses to try to address the driver shortage. But that does extend bus runs. Students are going to get home a little later. They are arriving to school on time, and buses are within our 30-minute window. We require buses to get to school no earlier than 30 minutes before the start time and arrive in the afternoon no later than 30 minutes after the ending bell of the school day. So, but yes, we're constantly monitoring ridership.
Good. I was just gonna say, I mean, I noticed like on the elementary end, sometimes like beginning of the school year, like the bus is loaded, and then as the year goes and trickles, like you see less and less kids riding that bus. So I was just kind of wondering if that's, does it investigate like why is your child not riding the bus anymore or anything like that, and then potentially save a seat or something for some other kid.
Ridership fluctuates day to day. The numbers that you see are based upon our March student count.
Okay.
So they're consistent from year to year in our benchmarking report. We do not have a way to accurately get daily bus ridership, without students scanning in or something like that. So we have to rely on these quarterly reports that we get on bus ridership.
And that's actually something that I noticed on page 8. If we look at that, you can see the average daily miles per bus are barely moving, but the average daily hours per bus is going up, right? Like almost a half an hour per day. So I think is that because we have been changing routes and consolidating routes, so the number of miles traveled isn't really changing, but they're on the road longer in order to travel those miles.
Correct. I mean, when we're taking a bus off the road, we're losing that deadhead mileage, so that would reduce the number of total miles that we're doing overall. Because if you look at prior years, you'll see that at one point we had 5.4 million miles traveled, and now we're down to less than 5.3. So we're traveling the same route miles when you're talking about picking up and dropping off students, but those additional miles were from the contractor's location to the starting first student being picked up, and from the last student being dropped off back to the contractor's location, and midday as well. We're reducing those deadhead miles as a result of the consolidations.
Okay, and that's where when you look at some of the efficiency numbers and you talk about the ridership being down a little bit, it's like you think that you could get more kids on the bus, but then we start exceeding the timing requirements, right? Like that particular route is just out there for too long. You don't get the kids to school in time, or you don't get them home in time, and so it's one great big optimization problem, right? But you guys have done an outstanding job of it with what you've had to work with.
Well, we do our best, but you're right. We have a 2-hour window from the earliest start time, meaning our high schools at 7:30, to our latest start time, some elementaries at 9:30. And within that 2-hour window, we're trying to get 3 runs per bus to be as efficient as we can, make the best use of the resources we have.
Right.
If we were to extend that 2 hours, then students are going to get home much later, be picked up much earlier, but that would impact the capacity figures that you see, the utilization factors.
All right, now it is the student reps' turn.
Oh, I'm sorry. She got her card too. Yeah. I have a question on if or how redistricting would affect some of these benchmarks.
Well, that's a good question. Redistricting would definitely affect the number of students and perhaps the boundaries of certain schools, and would have a major impact on our transportation system. We have, as I said, about what we call a 3-tier system. So most of our buses are serving multiple schools, as many as 3 schools. And we factor in how many bus routes we need based upon the number of students at each school. And we have to factor in the boundaries of those schools and what buses could serve the 3 schools that would be assigned to that bus. So the short answer is it's a major influence on transportation when we redistrict.
All right, do we have any more questions?
I'm just going to make one statement. I don't ever want to let a transportation report go by without saying that your safety record continues to be outstanding. So thank you very much to you.
Yes, yes.
Thanks to our drivers primarily and our contractors to make sure that everyone's doing what they need to do to be observant. And it's difficult driving out there, especially with students and
it's worse every day.
Behavior issues that we see.
Yep.
So, yeah, congratulations to our drivers and contractors.
And everyone stop when the bus lights are red.
Yellow.
Yellow. Fine.
Yellow.
Stop when they're yellow, and then you only have to worry about it when it turns red. Okay, stop
All right.
when they're yellow.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we will move on to the ESSA Consolidated Plan Report.
Annually, we submit the ESSA Consolidated Plan to MSDE and share it with the board. The plan combines all the federal title programs and related reporting requirements. Mr. Shockney and Dr. Hart are available for any questions or for discussion.
Ms. Savigny?
Were there any major changes from last year?
I'll invite Dr. Hart to come up, but no, the consolidated plan has been consolidated, which is why you don't have those very heavy binders. But
Because we used to get printouts that were.
You did. Now they're all tabs on a spreadsheet, which is way more efficient for the team. But Dr. Hart, anything different this year?
An extra tab that was added was the equity tab. You may see that difference in there. Before, they had a couple of equity questions, and they had a placeholder from last year and before. This time, equity actually has its own tab, and within that tab, each title grant has a portion that they had to add to show their collaboration with the equity regulations.
All right, thank you.
While Dr. Hart's up there, I got to say, at the Symposium for a Better Carroll, she represented our school system wonderfully, her and Mr. Streaker. So
Thank you.
thank you for being there again for our students.
Thank you.
And she looked great in the magazine, too.
Thank you. I'll just stay here all day. Thank you. And can you call my husband after this and tell him to say these things as well? But thank you, and happy holidays to everyone.
Same to you. All right, now we'll move on to the approval of award of bids.
Okay, there are 6 items on the award of bids. The first is a sole source Haas TM1P milling machine. And this purchase is part of the ongoing outfitting for the Career and Tech Programs equipment. Second, we have the Thomas Built buses. This award is to purchase a new training bus. The older bus will move to outdoor school, and the bus at outdoor school is now at the end of its legal life as a school bus.
It's retired.
Yes. Yes. Third, we've got furnish and install AccuTemp steamers at 3 schools. This award and the next 2 are part of the ongoing capital renewal of the food services program and are procured through the food service program funds. Fourth, we've got furnish and install the SS tables for food service at 14 schools. Fifth, we've got furnish and install the Charleston refrigerator freezers at 5 schools. And lastly, we have the athletic equipment reconditioning, and this is an annual contract for the reconditioning of various athletic equipment. Any questions?
Comments, questions? Ms. Savigny?
Dr. McCabe, I just did have a question. I was looking back to the transportation services report just to kind of compare the cost of the bus. I thought it looked like it was a pretty big jump to the 163 from what the average cost per bus was last year.
This would reflect what Mike said he called the 3 major manufacturers. We use Thomas Bus. This would be the cost for a special education equipped bus. We train for all of that, so this isn't the regular ed bus.
Yeah.
This would be the costliest of the buses on the road.
Okay, and that cost is in line with what we were seeing for the cost per special ed bus.
And this is way cheaper than electric buses when we bring that to you.
Yes.
Right, okay. Thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments?
And then just the one other question I had on food services. So like you said that these are continued renewal from the capital funds. Just making sure that, I know that it's just been a fabulous job, managing that budget, but just want to make sure that none of this, the renewal costs, that it won't manifest in having to increase prices for school lunches at the student level.
No.
Correct.
Okay. Great.
All right, thank you.
Oh, it looks like.
And Dr. Dorsey?
I just have a question on number 6, the one in association with Charles County. Is that like a piggyback, or what is that?
That is a piggyback bid,
Okay.
and Mr. King might be more helpful than me. I know that they're able to sort of fix football helmets and
Yeah.
shoulder pads and all types of other gear, and that paying this company to be able to fix certain things is cheaper than having to buy that new piece of equipment. So it's a sort of an up to, it's a vehicle that's there for however much it can be used to fix things so that we don't have to buy new things in a given year. But yeah, that's an actual piggyback bid on a different governmental purchase.
They recondition those football helmets
Yeah.
and do the shoulder pads, and Rydell's been around for a long time.
I was going to say, it's a number of items here that are covered under that.
Yep. That saves us money in the long run.
It does.
For when they can recondition them, because a football helmet isn't $50 anymore. I need to put a couple numbers in front of that.
Mr. Shockney wore my helmet in high school.
All right, are there any other comments? All right, thank you. Now we will move on to the approval of the license agreement.
Are we going to make a motion on that? And
Oh, we got to do that.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, all right. I need a motion and seconded by Mr. Whistler. Any other comments or questions? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now we need a motion for the approval of the license agreement for mezzanette station at Robert Moton Elementary School.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey and seconded by
Second.
Ms. Pataglia.
This is an agreement for the installation and operation of the weather station that is on the Robert Moton Elementary School property that is part of the broader network being established through the University of Maryland.
Comments? Ms. Savigny?
Okay, so this has been reviewed for legal sufficiency and okay, yeah, I see Mr. O'Mealy shaking his head. And just curious as to why, I'm kind of reading back through the information, was there a specific reason why Robert Moton site was chosen?
I'll answer, and if Ray needs to clarify, he can. So this is more of a county project with University of Maryland, County Emergency Services.
Okay.
There was a study by the University of Maryland folks statewide and county by county, and apparently the most ideal spot in all of Carroll County just happens to be on our property at Robert Moton. So we're granting, like, is that a fair? Hey, I got one right. I guess it's centrally located. Probably the topography helps. That sort of, all of those factors sort of make it make sense there. Maybe, the ability to get close enough to get access, those types of things.
Okay, great. And installation won't interrupt school operations in any way?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Mr. Whistler?
I appreciate it. Again, I'm just curious why we're not getting any kind of, are we getting any kind of compensation for allowing them to use the land for a 10-year period? I mean, I know normally with cell phone towers or any other kind of structures using land, we should be getting some sort of dividend or
Well,
payment.
no, there's no payment. This isn't that sort. This isn't a profit-making enterprise like a cell phone tower or something like that. This is simply this is something that the county emergency operations folks are very much in favor of. It's just as part of this large scale. All these the 75 or so weather stations across the state, information will be received much quicker about evolving events, weather events. So it's a benefit to the emergency response folks. It's a benefit. The data can be used, as a part of STEM classwork. So there's benefits to the overall to the community. So those are the benefits.
I understand the benefit. I'm just saying, but from using the space that we own, I mean, do other jurisdictions charge a fee or for using their sites? Again, I mean, are we the only one that doesn't charge a fee, or is this consistent across other counties?
I would have to. I don't know. I mean, with 75 across the state, I'm sure there's private owners, public owners. I can't imagine they do. If we were to charge, they may move off to a different. They move to a different site, something that isn't as ideal, perhaps.
Okay.
If I may, I've reviewed like agreements, not specifically this agreement, but for other school systems. And usually, when it's between units of government, there is no fee associated, unlike with the cell tower leases, where indeed we do charge a fee and get a payment. But this, as Ray was explaining, was viewed as three different units of government: the University of Maryland, the county, and the Board of Ed, and so typically we would not share, fees. What we did in reviewing this agreement is we added in the provision with respect to the impact on the school operations, the provisions with respect to sex offenders not being allowed as a contractor coming onto property, the typical clauses that we have. But there was never any discussion of, trying to make some money out of the deal.
Yeah, I'm just, I mean, if we have property and it's being used for those purposes, I just want to see if we can get some revenue out of it. But I understand that's customary. Thank you.
Ms. Pataglia?
Yeah, as well as Mr. Wessler, I have some concerns here. Typically, weather stations they're connected with the National Weather Service. So, for instance, the one that we typically use here in Carroll County, the information would come out of Sterling, Virginia. So I guess I'm just kind of like, okay, is this with the National Weather Service and the University of Maryland? Is this, how's this all tied? What is the benefit for it? Does it set off emergency sirens? Like many of our, like Oshawa has this emergency siren. Many of the county buildings do if there's like their tornado warning. Is it going to have something like that? Manchester Valley has the weather bug service that they have in their facility, which again is like a weather service, as lets everyone know what's going on with that app. So I guess that's a lot of the questions that I have, because if this is what the University of Maryland, okay, so where's how initially is the information coming from to there? Is it the National Weather Service collecting the data?
The station itself is collecting the data and providing that information in real time to the users, to emergency services folks, to the state. So it's not connected to those other weather agencies. It's its own. This is being created as its own entity. So the information is going to, well, as I say, it's going to be more. It's going to be real time. It's going to be much more usable for emergency services folks. So it's, I'm not sure, it's not connected to those others. It's its own.
The data do go to NOAA and to the National Weather Service, and we use them as alerts. We are in partnership with the county on AccuWeather, and we have some other forecasters, so there's sort of forecasting elements. This is sort of a MEMA initiative statewide, and so we wouldn't want to not be part of that.
Right.
This would be both data that does go to some forecasting services, but also I think data that the state of Maryland as a total collective emergency operations network is using to monitor other atmospheric conditions I'm making some things up because I'm not qualified, but as a tornado front moves through, they can, through this network of stations, see different factors unfolding, that sort of thing.
So would this be the one that Carroll County government will certifiably use? Like, for instance, their app that we get alerts from Carroll County government sometimes from. Would this be something that the Carroll County government is going to be relying on, that weather station particularly in emergency use? And I think that's because there's so many different, like I said, we got one at Man Valley, you got one over here at McDaniel, got another weather station somewhere else. So it's like we have multiple ones and multiple entities using them.
So some of the things that schools with weather bug or the lightning alert system, those are items we have procured as a Board of Ed, and we use them to inform athletic events or STEM education.
Yeah, but
So the short answer to your question, Ms. Pataglia, I think is yes. They will use it in the sense that MEMA's collecting all of this data, and if MEMA says do X, Y, or Z, then Carroll County Emergency Operations is going to activate and do X, Y, Z. To the extent that National Weather Service is collecting this data then that informs alerts and how we respond. It's part of the broader network of collecting the weather data for all of those systems.
Okay, and I worry mostly because, we talk a lot about, you hear a lot about in the news about misinformation and stuff. So I want the citizens to know, okay, if this station is per se, this is the one that CCPS is going to authorize. You know what I mean? So I want people to understand and know that, okay, this is the one they should trust the most if this is the case. It's just...
So not this station, but certainly this network that this station's part of is informing state and local decision making. We follow directives from MEMA, County Emergency when they stand up County Emergency Operations. Mr. Pierce, if he's still here, he's part of it, and Ray is part of it. That we're integrated to the extent that these data end up with other forecasting services like National Weather Service, AccuWeather, then we benefit from that too, because we use those services in partnership with county government. So this is good stuff for us. There's no bad thing here, but this station by itself isn't going to, send us a text or ring an alarm bell or ring your phone. It's just part of their network of gathering information.
Okay, all right.
I'm not sure if I...
No, that's all right.
Any other comments?
I have
Oh, yes, ma'am. Didn't see her.
One question that I have is just how will this project be used in the STEM curriculum, and how will we help students out with this?
Well, thank you, John. We've been in touch with Mr. Schumacher. They're going to review other states that have set up these mesonet programs, and they're going to see what that data reflects, what they can use, and then they'll integrate it into the curriculum. Hasn't been done yet, but that's their intent.
All right, thank you.
All right. Okay, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of revision to Board Policy JJIB, interscholastic athletic fee. I need a...
So moved?
So moved by Ms. Savigny, and second by Mr. Whistler.
Last month, we brought this revision to policy JJIB. The sole revision was to end the fee for corollary athletics. We have received some public comment, but much of the comments shows that folks may have not understood the proposed revision as it sits. So the proposed revision now returns for board action. And again, this is just to eliminate the fee for corollary.
Yes, and I don't think people really understood, because I got phone calls, we got emails, and they still have to pay for varsity and JV athletics, and we were trying to do something nice and not have to charge those children that are bowling and having their own time, just like everyone else. So I hope everyone understands
A wonderful,
that.
inclusive opportunity as well.
Absolutely.
Because our students without disabilities participate as well, too.
But it was amazing how many people did misunderstand. So
Nothing changes for interscholastic
No,
athletics.
absolutely not.
This is just to eliminate the fee for our students with disabilities who participate in our 3 seasons of corollary athletics. It's a wonderful thing, and always encourage anyone to come out and check out the wonderful
watch.
events that are happening. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the revision to the 2023-2026 strategic plan by Dr. Dorsey and seconded by Mr. Whistler. Thank you.
Last month, we presented you with a revised strategic plan, incorporated feedback from our prior session. You shared some discussion on the revised plan last month, and Mr. Shockney will now summarize the edits that reflect your discussion from November. Otherwise, the revised plan is submitted as is for your approval.
The only major edit that we discussed previously at the last meeting was that we, under Pillar 4, I believe it is, we identified that we would bring an annual report on our student discipline data, not including it as a metric within the strategic plan, but that it would be an annual report that we would bring to you.
Now, since Mr. O'Neill gave us some wonderful information about Blueprint, I think some people are going to suggest other ideas for this policy. Now, will that have to go back out for another 30-day review? Because I want to make sure everybody understands that before we go on. Mr. O'Mealy? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but, I just want to make sure that if we do want to add some changes, will that have to?
If you are going to add changes, you're going to have to do it just like any other motion to amend. You're going to have to vote on the motion to amend, you're going to have to amend it, and then you're going to have to vote on the main motion. But it doesn't have to come back.
It doesn't have to go out for another 30 days?
No.
Okay, all right, let's proceed. Ms. Savigny?
Oh, thanks, Ms. Herbert. So the one, completely in alignment with what you just said, Ms. Herbert, if we're looking on Pillar 3, it's the last item that starts off with saying by 2026, CCPS will begin implementing that piece, and we're basically saying that we're going to increase FTE by 60 in next year, and by 125, 2 years out. I think that was kind of under the assumption that needed to be fully in place and implemented by 2025. But we now understand with the flexibility that's being allowed that we don't even have to start doing that until 2025. And then there's a pretty long window of being able to kind of roll it in, right? And with the strategic plan being sort of the vehicle that you say, these are the things that we want to align the budget to the strategic plan items, and this is no longer required to happen over the next few years, I would recommend that we remove that last item from Pillar 3, at least for this cycle of the strategic plan.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I will make a motion that we remove the last item on Pillar 3.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Whistler. We have a second. And discussion, comments, questions? Mr. Whistler?
I really appreciate you raising that issue, Ms. Savigny, because again, manpower costs are probably the most significant costs that we incur as a board. And
80%.
again, we have the flexibility of
85 now.
implementing this again later, or maybe at a smaller amount later, but I definitely think it's appropriate. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, I will call for the vote on this change. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I thank all of you for that. And it's 85% of our budget for salaries. I was off by 5%. That was the amendment. So now, then we need, is there any other discussion? Then I call for the vote for the approval of the revision to the strategic plan. Yes, as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously, and thank you. Now I need a motion for the approval of appointments.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey and seconded by Ms. Battaglia. Dr. McCabe.
First this evening, we have Wanda Brandon, a kindergarten teacher at Piney Ridge Elementary, to acting assistant principal, Piney Ridge Elementary. We have Emily Dietz, school psychologist at Collier County Public Schools, Florida, to school psychologist in student services. And finally, we have Morgan Pratt, the assistant principal at Piney Ridge Elementary, to acting principal, Piney Ridge Elementary. And the first and the third appointments are actually retroactive. So they have been going on for a couple of weeks based on a leave of absence.
Questions or comments? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of personnel action items.
So moved.
By Ms. Savigny, seconded by Mr. Whistler. Thank you.
For the monthly personnel action items, there are 3 new hires, 4 leaves of absence, and 1 decrease in FTE. That's it.
Seeing no cards, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need an approval of change order for the East Middle School Replacement Project.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia, seconded by Dr. Dorsey. And I do want to thank Mr. Marks for coming up and doing a great job of explaining, halting the project and continuing on and working with all sides to make something that was very agreeable and didn't cost us as much as it could have. So I just want to thank you. Are there any other comments or questions about this change order? All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of the CIP budget transfer 24-01 for East Middle School Replacement Project. By Ms. Battaglia, seconded by Mr. Whistler. Thank you.
This is one of the items I detailed in the construction report. This CIP transfer will finalize the budget for the East Middle project to include the rock removal and other contingencies. As with all budget transfers, pending your approval, it will go to the county commissioners for their approval within 30 days.
I would say, I'm sure you all can't wait for it to get the blacktop in and get that bus loop in, and that'll make everybody happy. Any other comments? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need approval of the forest conservation easement for Robert Moten Elementary. So moved by Dr. Dorsey. By Mr. Whistler. Thank you.
This is a routine forest conservation easement associated with the Robert Moten paving project that's going on.
Comments? Questions? Okay, seeing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And now we will have a discussion on the proposed revisions to policy IIAA section selection, evaluation, adoption of instructional materials.
At the October 11th, 2023 meeting, the board requested that staff review board policy IIAA, selection, evaluation, and adoption of instructional materials, and develop potential revisions to the policy that include a definition of sexually explicit content in an effort to provide clarification and avoid ambiguity. Mr. Shockney has worked with legal counsel and will present to you a potential definition.
All right, board members. So what I've done is I've taken the current policy and added additional language. The new language is there in all caps. I could read it aloud at your request, or. But essentially what we've done here is we've clarified here again, and as the intent to provide greater clarity here, the additional language is the Board of Education of Carroll County recognizes that all instructional materials, including supplemental materials, shall meet the established general selection criteria. Aside from the instructional materials approved for instruction related to the family life and human development, or as otherwise approved by the superintendent, all their instructional materials, including supplemental materials, shall not contain sexually explicit content. Sexually explicit content is defined as unambiguously describing, depicting, showing, or writing about sex or sex acts in a detailed or graphic manner.
All right. Comments? Mr. Whistler.
Again, staff, thank you so much for doing this. I really hope this clears any confusion. I really hope we get a lot of feedback from the public, because I believe we're going to do 30 days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we will.
So, again, the focus is providing the best quality materials to our students, and I really appreciate the staff for putting this together.
Thank you. Any other comments? Sahitha?
Hello, I just have a few questions. So, when we discuss supplementary materials, we mean materials taught in classrooms, right?
No, supplemental materials, a good example of that are our books and our media centers are considered supplemental materials. Any instructional material goes through our curriculum council and review process, which is it's more intensive of a review process. It goes, a committee typically a supervisor makes a recommendation. The committee will review and consider. That's all packaged in the work that Mr. Wernick brings, typically in the early fall for your review. That goes out for public feedback and comment. As part of the curriculum council work, it's also out for public comment. So, but our general selection criteria, the criteria applies to both instructional and supplemental materials. The process for approval, though, for each of those two are different. What this is saying is that the definition is being defined because the current criterion of does not contain sexually explicit content applies to both instructional and supplemental materials.
Right. Thank you. I have one more question. So when we are trying to define sexually explicit content, it's often difficult to do so, especially regarding material that can be a bit more ambiguously defined and ambiguously stated. Something I'm worried about is how exactly will we evaluate material, even instructional material and non-instructional material, regarding explicit content or content that isn't exactly explicit. It is in nature ambiguous, and ambiguous content is often very seen in classic works of literature that are present in our instructional material, which are very critical pieces of writing in our English classes. So that's just one of my concerns.
Sure, yeah, and I think that's the intent here of the definition, is to clarify what we're talking about with being unambiguously describing or depicting, and then being detailed and graphic, I believe, are key words to that, which would be the standard.
Another question I have is, how will we be evaluating what exactly is ambiguous versus unambiguous?
Well, unambiguously means it's clear in its intent, and ambiguous means, to me, it be unclear in its attempt.
All right.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
All right.
She put you on the spot.
I did.
Good answer. Good question.
Yeah.
I know.
Again, as you referenced, this will go out for feedback, and we appreciate feedback from our community on the proposed changes.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for all your hard work. All right, now we will move on to unfinished new business, if there's any. Ms. Savigny, Miss Battaglia, sorry.
So real quick, couple things. First, don't forget to nominate your Teacher of the Year nominees. Get them in as soon as possible. I'd like to see hundreds at that event. Second, here we go. It's Christmas time. Happy holidays, everybody. I always like to get the bling bling going.
Shut the lights off. That's okay.
There we go. Yeah, we gotta get bling bling. And third, we did hear from a wonderful teacher here this evening regarding cell phone distractions, and there have been a couple areas. There you go. There have been a couple areas around the country that they're banning cell phones in their schools. So I'm proposing that we potentially take a look at our cell phone policy again. I think we need to take a look at this, whether it's, we do a pilot program in a high school and a middle school, or look at hardening up on some of the rules or punishments. I don't know, but I think we need to take a hard look at this again, and definitely look at some of the outcomes of other school systems around the country, what they're doing, and see what they're getting at there.
What I would suggest is that we start with a presentation that perhaps reviews our current policy and regulations, and that also maybe looks at what some of the surrounding districts and states are doing, especially if it's different than what we currently do, and then we can have that discussion and go from there. Would that be agreeable?
I think so. If we can find data too on performance, before and after cell phone usage, see performance in schools, whether it be their math or attendance or grades or mental beings or bullying, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of things we could look at that for.
Yeah, and I was wondering, I didn't know whether there was any data discipline-wise or not related.
I'm sure there is. I mean, because it's supposed to, but I know, as he said, it was
Right.
7 steps. I think there's a lot of aspects to this. It's class distraction, bullying, okay, parents and individuals following directions that we do have, and then we have those that do not follow. So I think it would be a great idea for us to go back. And everyone has a Chromebook now, and they don't need to bring their phones to class just for that. And so I think it's antiquated. So I think we need to look at it. Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, again, as a middle school math teacher, cell phones were the bane of my existence. I just couldn't tell you how much they disrupted my classroom. Moreover, they have programs now on phones where you can just shine it over the math problem and it gives you the answer. So it contributes to, unethical practices, and it really doesn't challenge our students academically. But at the same time, I don't want to see something that puts our teachers as cops. They have enough to worry about, but we really need to develop something that has teeth, that's consistent, that, just allows our teachers to focus on learning and not being police.
Yeah. We definitely need to update it. So, Mrs. Savigny.
So I just wanted to ask, sorry, I have my mic off. Just wanted to ask about the flexibility or leeway that we give our teachers and our principals at this point in time. I mean, teachers have the ability to say, I mean, I know my daughter comes home and says, there are some classes that she's in where your cell phones have to be in your backpack off to the side of the room, and that's it. Like, you cannot have your cell phone out. And so how many of is that problematic? Like, if there's flexibility, or are we basically saying, are educators asking us to say, make that the standard? Because it seems like we already have the flexibility in the policy for them to be able to do that.
We do. But, it might be a good idea to just review it with everybody here so that we can determine, is it a problem of policy and regs, or is it a problem of implementation? And then we can kind of parse that out and figure out where we need to go from here.
And I would suggest as well, if possible, I would like to take up Mr. Hemp on his suggestion of certainly involving staff members, school members, whether it's the classroom teachers or administrators, just to get their perspectives here during a meeting with us.
Yes.
I'd love to hear, their accounts.
Right.
Teacher council,
Yes.
the teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, and I totally agree with the way forward, having a presentation and then talking about the policy and everything. But what I'd like to say, that will take a little while.
It will.
I'd like
Well-
to make sure that educators realize that they have the ability to do what needs to be done in their classroom, like if they immediately, right?
Yes.
That they don't have to wait for all of this to play out.
No.
If they think it would be more beneficial for them to say to students coming in,
Right.
your cell phones are in your backpack.
There's nothing in our policy or regs that says that students need to have their phones out during class. Nothing. So that should not be happening now unless there's a reason for a teacher to have students have those phones out.
Right. Yeah, and I totally understand the angst of, not wanting to be the cell phone police and everything like that, but hopefully we know that we have enough flexibility in our policy for them to at least do something right now
It's
until
a
the rest
little-
of this plays out.
It's a little differentiated by level, but at every level, elementary, middle, and high, devices must be silenced and stored out of sight while in classrooms. It's those other locations that are a little bit differentiated based upon elementary, middle, and high in the current regulations.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the same time, if a teacher wants the kids to play a Kahoot game, then, but the teacher's discretion should play out, but I appreciate that.
All right. Now it's the student representative's time again.
So, cell phone policy is something that's pretty widely debated between students, and so something that I want to bring up is how, for a lot of students, different classrooms have different rules. That's something that's really important to address. Some teachers are very strict. Some teachers, we know, when we enter this classroom, we should not have our phone out. Whereas some teachers are a little bit more lenient. And in both classrooms, from personal experience and from what other students have spoken to me based on this, is that it is not necessarily ever the fault of a teacher not enforcing a policy enough, or a student not. It's mostly on the fault of certain students using it in times when they're not supposed to, because I myself as a student have taken my phone out after I finished the reading in a class, or I know that many of my other peers have done that as well. And I think that cell phone usage is very important to reduce in class, and that's something that is hard for a lot of students to admit, I'll say. But what's also important is understanding the implications of zero tolerance policies that have very negative effects on students that aren't necessarily using cell phones as a distraction in classrooms, because when you go into one class, you know what to do. When you go into another class, you know, okay, I can have my phone on my desk. And forcing teachers to sort of have a very one-way rule for everything, when that isn't necessarily always a problem in smaller classrooms or bigger classrooms, that is something that we also need to address when working this policy.
Consistency, having a consistency throughout the entire school system. And I agree with you on that, absolutely. Because it can get confusing.
Yep. All right, okay, so we are going to work on that. And at 3 p.m., Monday, December 18th, that's coming up, we have a budget work session in the boardroom at 125 North Court Street. At 5 p.m. on Wednesday, January 20th, 2024, board meeting with public participation in the boardroom at 125 North Court Street. And at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, January 31st, the FY25 budget hearing, followed by the FY25 budget work session in the boardroom at 125 North Court Street. Before I call for adjournment, I would like to give everyone a heartfelt thank you to all of our employees for working so hard and diligently throughout the year. I would like to thank all our school bus drivers that get our children safely to and from school each day, and especially Ms. Savigny pointed that out with our safety. I would like to thank all of our partners in the community that make CCPS the best school system in the state. I would like to give a special thank you to the commissioners and the sheriff's office for working hand in hand with us throughout the year. And my final thank you to the citizens of Carroll County, parents and students that make this school system so successful. Happy holidays to all. And now I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we have
Yes.
to go.
Oh, yes, I've got to make my little announcement again. Thank you. At the conclusion of open session, the board will be returning to closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining and to receive legal advice. Now, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey,
I'll
seconded
second.
by Ms. Pataglia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Happy holidays.
Thank you all.